So how much is the political equation changing in Nigeria as conflict now appears to be raging in all the main parties, including pockets of the APC, as the country heads towards 2027? On and off the record, the accounts provided in all the parties seem to dovetail towards worsening political warfare, which has left all their futures uncertain and tenuous. One need only look at the turbocharged turbulence in the PDP, which escalated dramatically today, as well as the chaos in Labour, the turmoil in the SDP, and the uncertainty in the APC, to know that polarization in all the parties is deepening, and the idea is no longer for the warring groups to cease fire. The idea seems to be, if you cease, we fire, as we saw in the PDP today. So, as we assess the fraught tangle of this country's politics, we ask, what will Nigeria's political space herald in the months ahead? How much of a roller coaster ride are we in for, with the prospect of a catastrophic derailment for all the main parties seemingly around every bend? And after such a tumultuous ride, which one of them will end in a victory lap? Well, one unspun political analyst who's been following every twist and turn of Nigerian politics is Professor Udenta, Distinguished Fellow of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought and founding National Secretary of the Alliance for Democracy. And he joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
It's my pleasure, Charles, to be with you once more.
To be honest, I can't think of anybody who can put all this in clear, lucid perspective than you. So we're very grateful for you, for coming in. How did you feel those political tremors that rumbled the PDP today?
In context, PDP, was a product when it was born of circumstance, of a compelling historical circumstance. It was the biggest of the three legacy parties. Mine was Alliance for Democracy, the other was All People's Party. So it was like a combination of the liberal and the conservative wing of the Nigerian political elite in concert with the retreating military to find a grounding, a stable grounding for Nigerian nascent democracy or fledgling democracy after years of brutal military dictatorship. I was in power for 16 years. That means it built enormous tentacles and infrastructure across the length and breadth of the country. So when it lost power, typically in the Nigerian scenario, loss of power, loss of influence, loss of space, and loss of viability. That has culminated, of course, with the challenges the party today is facing. In the morning, it was almost impossible to predict what the outcome will be today. But because we understand the dynamics of politics and power, and we knew there are critical elements working around the clock, day and night, moving the needle gradually but persistently in the direction of inclusion and consensus building. It was easy now for the two factions of the NWC, if we call them so, to come together in a particular space at a particular time. For the BOT that faced some challenges at another plaza, to equally be part of that process, to equally be part of the conversation with the governors forum, and for the party to agree late evening to now reconstitute itself into a neck, not an expanded caucus. In deference to those who felt that the last neck of 99 proclaimed the neck of 100, and that if you insist, like INEC is doing, that it must be expanded caucus, it will diminish the party's autonomy of space and independent action. But then, the neck of 100 is not determinative neck in the sense of proclaiming the convention, setting up committees, so the party can get away with it. But one important resolution there is the now inclusion of the national secretary, for whatever it is worth, into the mix of the NWC. The chairman, the Magoon, and then with the secretary and the rest of the people there. Overseeing these processes, as you and I talked about some time ago, is a very, very formidable governors forum of the party, where most of the meeting today held, hosted by the governor of Bauchi State, who is the chairman of that forum, who was thanked profusely by the NEC for staying the course, for moral clarity and for strength of character in making sure that the party could get to where they are today. The party hasn't come out fully out of the woods, but one thing stands the party in good stead. The life of this NWC will evaporate in the next 2 or 3 months. So the convention will occur between August and October. If they have a fresh start to the end of the year, they say have about 5 months into 2026 to prepare. And finally, the enduring quality of PDP is not because it's a party without blemish. No, it is full of warts and deficiencies. But when you talk about opposition politics in a multi-party democratic format, PDP is key because it's in every home in Nigeria, in millions of hearts, in every local government, in every ward. So it's easy to resurrect such infrastructure and build some consensus against the ruling government.
They certainly have potential to rebuild.
That's exactly. That is why the crisis never went away. If the party was as dead as people thought, nobody will be talking about over a grave which already had been dug and covered with flowers strewn on top of it. But because the party is still vibrant, and those who are in charge of the party do not even mind those who are escaping. Those who want to defect are not defecting with the millions who voted for them. They are escaping because of certain pressure they feel from the ruling establishment, from the presidency of Bola Tinubu. So those who are left will understand that we have enormity of space to operate. You have opportunities you can exploit, and you have challenges you can overcome. But broadly speaking, when you look at the political terrain, you find the issue of polarization, even fragmentation. It may be a sign of vibrancy of a political tradition, or even its decay. Who knows what? This government lost the plot clearly when it was inaugurated 2 years ago because it transcended the politics of the elite and moved straight into policy and governance. It became frustrated because politicians are ghosts. They move everywhere. By the moment 2 years was up, this government has pivoted into the politics of transition in 2027 that has shortened and neutered governance and policies. The rumble in PDP, the Labour Party, the SDP has not caught up with the APC because the president is juggling the pressure from the north. Who do I drop? Who do I retain? Gandhiji, of course, had to fall on his sword in order to create a space for something to happen somewhere down the line. The VP is being publicly humiliated across board. It's pretty obvious. Who knows what will happen? Whose assurances are being given to people? Dogara and some other characters from their woodworks are crawling out, claiming they want to be VP when you have just 2 years spent by this current team.
Well, it's very interesting, your analysis. So let's try and take it in bite-sized chunks, because you put a lot in there, articulately, I might say. But looking at the growing turmoil in all the main parties, which you touched on, can it be said, I mean, including the APC, that the only predictable constant is the fact that everything has become so unpredictable?
It is not that. Politics is a measure from predictability. Democracy is actually an engine for conflict. It accentuates conflict if you have a deeper democratic space, because people now have the opportunity and the guts and the freedom and the rights to contest every single thing. On the repressive apparatus of governance, people keep quiet. So democracy is both, a mover of conflict, but creates mechanism whereby it can even resolve those conflicts. So politics is conflict.
But democracy is purely a concept. It is the people, the character.
Yes, absolutely.
Of the people who are practicing that democracy that we have to.
There are three parts of that democracy.
And I mean, there
are three parts. One is the instrument.
You've got a lot of sniveling, snotty.
That's the point.
It is never
an event. It is a process codified in three formats. The instrument of democratic government, the Constitution, is not alive. The institutions, the power is there. But then the processes, the party interaction, the formation of party, the building party infrastructure, contesting election, declaring victory or defeat, going to court, that is where you find those contestations. That's where you find those fragmentations and polarizations. All the parties are polarized and fragmented, but the parties will recuperate somewhere down the line. Well, the timetable is in their favor. The president and his team panicked. That is why they started politics 2 years early. INEC timetable, if you review it, will tell you that June, July next year will be the nomination process for the presidency.
So you're not alarmed, and you don't share in the view that some people share that politically, I mean, we're heading into dangerous ground.
We're not.
As 2027.
No, we're not, because 2027. In spite of the fact that in American political tradition, which is perpetual campaign, perpetual politics, perpetual strategic communication, Nigeria's situation is a little bit different. It's almost segregated on the basis of INEC title, which is strictly enforced. What the parties are doing now is actually negotiating for positions and grounds, trying to feel their way in. The moment the game is set to explode,
right,
you find that these fragmented political formations we coalesce into one or two or three constituencies. The PDP will hold its convention between August and October ending. That is the time they have to do it on the basis of the existing NWC,
right,
where it will lapse. You have November, December to fine-tune your infrastructure, the apparatus in which you have for the new ESCO to sit well and reactivate those structures across the country. You have 6 months, 2026, to prepare for the convention.
Yeah, but you're assuming that things are going to go on a very smooth
the
trajectory.
way they are working now. If you're close enough to the people leading this charge, the tenacity of purpose and heart. The chairman, as I said the last time, surprised me and is still surprising me. In spite of the fact that today he has been told be more inclusive. Anyanwu himself has been given a new lease of life. He must go back to his zone, the southeast, and placate them and say, there may be difficulties and differences, but now we are together. We have to work. The chairman of the Governors Forum, Bala Mohammed, the governor of Bauchi State, who has been shepherding this process, hosting the meetings, both the stakeholders, both the caucuses, the beauty, and so on, over these months there, is not sleeping. He understands that you have to have moral clarity and strategic depth to watch this process growing in a positive direction. The moment you navigate out of the most dangerous legal terrain, the issue of a national secretary, because if you do not execute that clearly, the fate of the party could be the fate of the Befet APC in Zamfara State in 2019.
Right. Well, we're well familiar, as you have also shared with us, what's been going on in terms of the crisis levels in the PDP and as well as the Labour Party, because I mean you've kind of peripherally touched on it. We all know what's going on there. But as you yourself said recently, the SDP has now been fully caught by the bug of internal party chaos. Those are your words. What's your reading of what's going on there?
Just like PDP, Labour Party, and SDP, the playbook of this government is not uniquely new. The difference is that in 1999 to 2003, Obasanjo, who formulated, because of the contingency national situation we have there, a militarized version of democracy, not because that's what he wanted. He was a military general. That was Minister of Defense, a general. General Guzo was a general, minister of the NSA. Abdullahi was chief of staff. So the 4 key positions were held by the military in order to protect this fragile Nigerian state. The fragility of the political order was clear. They needed to, after Abacha's and Abiola's in Brooklyn. Now in 2002, that government started a process of fragmenting existing parties. That's why Alliance for Democracy beat the sword, beat the dust, say with APP. But that was a period in which we could tolerate such excesses. So 2025, 24-25, you find the presence of Bola Ahmed Tinubu trying to have the same playbook. Sow the seed of disaster and descent in PDP. Sow the same in Labour. Sow the same in SDP. So you have a weakened, limping opposition to 2027 for leisurely re-entry. So the crisis in SDP and PDP and Labour Party, if the truth must be told, the crisis between those who insist that these parties will remain autonomous, independent power centers, than those who believe the undertakers of the parties in order to pave way for the president to re-emerge in 2027. So if that is the case, such individuals who undertakers, who I call quisling, must be well healed, well prepared and well protected with resources that could do such insurgencies. What does it take to have an insurgency? 3, 4, 5 people of NWC, of any party, meet together in some place, sack the chairman and the secretary or whoever there, proclaim themselves the new laws of the manor, so the crisis begins. If you have the resources to shepherd this kind of irredentist political movement, then nothing will stop you in the short run.
But while the president, as you suggested, is focusing on, in your words, I mean, I'm paraphrasing you, destabilizing the opposition, the cracks that most people chose to ignore are now starting to widen in the APC, his own party, with the chairman of the party, you mentioned that earlier, Umar Ganduje, some would say forced out, the issues around the vice president, the scramble for tickets for 2027. What sort of risks does this escalate?
That's what you have is here is a Latin expression. I don't know whether I got it right. Amo habendi, Chris Kit habendo. The love of having grows with having. The love of power grows with having power. The love of eating up the political space grows with eating up the spaces already available. So the time comes, as you and I were conversing before this show, when you have a position for a governorship, for example, you have about 30 these people eyeing for that job. There'll be a lot of fragmentation there, of polarization, because they're going to fight themselves to stand still. And given the state of the nation today, and the issues around the governing method of the president and his policy trajectories. If I at the North, Erufai was here some time ago, he's rioting. So that riot in the North, which is a cumulative sense of dissonance to say we are not part of you anymore, is going to become increasingly more acute. So what do you have to do in that regard? You have to say the chairman may become a burden, a stumbling block to what we want to accomplish strategically speaking. And suddenly you find the Northeast zone endorsing the president without advice from his own zone, and a whole lot of noise and ruckus around that matter, and the party and the president speaking together that the vice presidential slot is up for grab by saying that the president will choose when you have a convention proclaiming him the candidate of the party. We borrowed this thing from the American system. This thing is conjoined presidency. You can't separate them. The VP is a heartbeat away. That's why you get careful with who you choose to run with. Reagan and Senior Bush, Junior Bush and Dan Quayle, Clinton and Gore, for 8 years each. Because it's mandatory that you take your time to pick, make your pick. Suddenly you are publicly humiliating a sitting vice president 2 years, maybe 2 years into the tenure, because all of the grand strategic vision about how power could be secured in 2027. You can find the stresses going on in the South, the neutralization of pockets of opposition at the level of the elite. From Delta State decampment to Akwa Ibom, the governor and his bunch there. But the danger for the president and his team is that the elite may be decamping. The PDP infrastructure in those states are intact. The people have disaligned from this decamping elite. So ultimately, as these other parties begin to find their bearing, overcome this destabilizing fracture situation they find themselves, and as APC begins to gradually implode somewhere down the line, bloated as this way with flatulence, and gluttony.
I like that.
And gluttony of power.
Bloated with flatulence and gluttony.
So you find
I like the bit about
flatulence. The party may become endangered far more than the PDP that is actually sniveling out today.
It could, and maybe, but it maybe also could not.
I
mean, that's why I said there's that element of unpredictability. But meanwhile, there is some drama over the attempt to register a new party, the ADA, by the opposition coalition. Okay. What do you make of what's going on?
Okay, now, one can say the more the merrier, however you put the term. My take is that ADA, if it gets registered, is going to be like a backdrop, waiting and watching with eagle eye. Has the PDP come out of its current situation that is not so good?
Yeah, but even beyond, I don't mean to interrupt you, beyond the ADA, we're also hearing today
of ADC.
ADC.
The conversation around ADC.
There's a bunch of people now adopting from that same opposition coalition.
It's been going on for some time. Even a month ago or thereabout, it was even proclaimed that it's now ADC.
Yeah, we have the chairman
utilize and so on there. So you have the ADC readying itself for whatever role it may play. You have the ADA hoping to get registered and hoping too that the bigger opposition party like the PDP stumbles to say, hello, you don't need to search far. We're here. But if the PDP comes out and as it is becoming increasingly clear with tenacity of purpose and determination of heart, it will come true. Implication is that both the ADC and the ADA could well rumble back into the PDP to say, here is a big home for everybody. If the task is to remove this government in power, why scatter our frontier or disaggregate our strategic formulation to make it a lot more difficult for us to accomplish our strategic objective?
Right. Well, I mean, we talked about the dangers as we head towards 2027. You didn't seem to think that there were dangers. You said that you expect that I mean, I don't know whether you expect that the election itself will provide enough of a rallying point.
It's not the election. It's a timetable. Like people misread the timetable. There's an urge that the PDP doesn't get it right. Maybe 5 months ago, it's gone. It's not gone. We're still 2025. By the end of this year, the PDP gets it right. I'm sure the party will get it right. With kind of the formidable work, incredible amount of work the people are putting there. If they get it right, they have the rest of first 2 quarters of 2026 to prepare for the presidential election. Not election, to take a candidate, and 10 more months to even build and rebuild. You know, tinker here and there. Because if you have your candidate by June 2026, election is likely to be in March 2027. From June 26 to March is a lot of time in politics for a lot of things to happen. So why the fear of a polarization, fragmentation, and decay may well be real, it is not suffocating to the point in which people are being choked up.
Right, and that's what your crystal ball
absolutely tells me. That is what experience,
right,
over time, knowing the terrain as well as I do, and being involved in the process all through my life.
Indeed, and we appreciate your analysis, as always. Professor Udenta is a distinguished fellow of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought and founding National Secretary of the Alliance for Democracy. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Charles, to be with you.
Really good to see you.